Hi everyone, welcome back. This is Mandy, and this is hopefully our last Tumbler Christmas gift, so I figured I would share the experience with you. This is a little, I think it's a 12-ounce little coffee cup. So it has a flat coat of spray paint on it. My husband was going to use this color, and then we decided to go a different direction. So that's why it looks like it has stuff on it already. It's just spray paint. So we have we're putting a regular base coat of epoxy on, and I'm showing you the colors I'm using. This first one is Mystic Primrose from Colourarte. It's a Resin Art pigment. And second one is Aruba Sky, also from Colourarte. This is a Resin Art luster pigment, so those kind of look glittery. And next up is I'm probably putting epoxy in them as I'm going. The next one is Surf's Up, also Resin Art, one of my favorites. If you've seen any of these tumbler videos, you've seen that we've used some of these colors in the other cups. Mermaid, another beautiful one of my favorites from Colourarte. Again, these are all Resin Art pigments. Some of the people that we're making these for happen to like very similar colors. So, and Blue Moon, another one of my favorites, Resin Art. And so we're putting just a quick epoxy coat on so that these will move easier. The one thing that happens in this video, usually if I use Stone Coat, which I love Stone Coat. This is Stone Coat, I want to say it's countertop epoxy. I usually use Stone Coat art resin, but the one thing I will say is Stone Coat, I prefer, if I'm using it for resin art, to let it set up a little bit just so that the colors don't blend too quickly, just because it has kind of a thin viscosity. So like I really like to let it sit up for a while before I make a resin cross or a resin cup, because I like it to thicken up a little bit. If I use like KS resin or Faux Bristle, those are typically thicker, so I don't really do that. Stone Coat has a nice long working time, so you can kind of get away with that. So in this instance, excuse me, I had not waited that typical time, so I kind of wish that I had. This is Aruba Sky. Aruba Sky is like a green with a good bluish shift, so almost like a phthalo green with a little bit of a teal, and not bright, because phthalo green's bright. So, maybe not like phthalo green at all. What do I know? Mystic Primrose is this one, but it's like that kind of deep, rich green, but it has a blue in it, so it's kind of a blue-green. Mystic Primrose is sort of like a violet blue, so it has just a touch of purple, but it's more blue than it is purple, if that's fair to say. And what I do is I kind of clean my little stick off on the bottom, and that kind of coats the bottom, because as it turns, it starts to swirl around. This is Mermaid. Beautiful color. And so we're just putting a little bit. Obviously, this is substantially sped up. This is Blue Moon. Probably one of my favorite blues ever to use in resin. It's a gorgeous, rich blue. And I've used it on all of the Tumbler videos recently except for one. So it's a fan favorite for me. I think Andromeda would have been cool on this cup, but I did not use it. Now, obviously, you can see this and say, you've got way too much epoxy on this cup. And you're right. You're absolutely right. But I already mixed it up, and I'm going to use it, and at least most of it. So what I'm doing at this point when I'm adding the colors is I'm just finding a place where we have either too much of one color in one place, or we have some of the bare cup still showing. Because as it turns, it's going to start to gel and mix up and swirl and all of those important things. So here we have Surf's Up, and on camera it probably looks very similar to Mermaid. Surf's Up is more teal, Mermaid is more aqua. So they're kind of in a similar color family, but they're different. And Surf's Up is another one of my favorites. Actually, they're both one of my favorites, but I love the way Surf's Up creates like a pop of color amongst the blue moon and like the violet purples. So I'm a big fan. Mermaid is similar, and I love how it looks so bright when the light hits it. It's just really beautiful. So now I'm just using up some of my leftover resin. That's some more Aruba Sky. You can see on camera it looks very green, but in person it looks more blue-green. So now we're just torching our bubbles, and here you got to be careful because the longer you torch, the hotter your resin gets, and the hotter your resin gets, the more it flows. So you can start to see now that I've torched, it's really merging together a lot more than I planned. There are also a couple of places where I probably didn't mix up the Aruba Sky well enough, and the luster, I think it's the luster, no, I think it's the diamond. I don't remember which one, but there's some of the Resin Art tints that have a diamond base, which means that they're very sparkly. So they have bigger flakes in them. So I did not mix up the Aruba Sky well enough for it to fully dissolve. So what I noticed is I had some of those little particles of color, and I thought they were bubbles at first. So what you see me doing is taking my tweezers and grabbing those. It would have been fine if they stayed like that. I probably would have just needed to sand them like you would a bubble. But while I noticed them, I just went ahead and tried to get them out. And so because this has all really merged quite a bit, what you'll see is in a moment, I take a little bit of Surf's Up and I add it back in. Now, obviously I have, excuse me, too much epoxy already on here, which is why we have so much of the colors merging together, and it's kind of thin. But I still wanted a little bit of the contrast with the teal. So all I did is I just went and added some really small lines of the Surf's Up to create a little bit more contrast. And the result ends up being really nice. And I'm sorry about the glare from the light. There's not a ton that I can do about that because obviously epoxy is very reflective. But you can see I'm just adding enough for contrast. And it might seem like it's a lot, like right now. But you got to remember, as this turns, that's going to continue to swirl around, and those lines will merge and become a little bit more uniform. Not uniform, that's not really the right word, but y'all know what I mean, right? So we're just adding a little bit, and you see it's adding some of that contrast right back in. And that's the wonderful thing about working with resin, is for the most part, you can continue to work or add another layer or something. And so your piece is not ever necessarily a final result until you really want it to be. And that is true about acrylic pouring, sort of. Like you can embellish a piece and you can add things to it. You can add a resin layer and add some resin color. But ultimately the composition underneath still plays a part. With resin art, you can add layers and you can make them transparent, semi-transparent, semi-opaque. You really have a lot of ability to keep working a piece. So if something just totally sucks the first time you do it, you have the option to kind of tweak it a little bit. So we have a close-up coming up. I'm just going to keep adding a little bit. Obviously the finished result, as it swirls and continues to move, it's going to be a little bit different than the close-up. When I moved this to where it was going to turn overnight, I think when I plugged it back in, it started spinning in the opposite direction. And at first I was going to change it, but then it was kind of working for it. It kind of added some movement. So it ended up drying very nicely. So anyway, don't forget, there are discount codes in the description box below. such as 20% off of Colourarte, where you can save anything, or 20% off of anything that you buy on the website, including primary elements, prism pour, resin pigments. So it's a great discount. So don't forget about the description box below. But let me know, do you like these colors? What do you think? And I am just getting my hands cleaned up after I tweak these final things, and I'll show you a quick close-up. I think she's pretty. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. You can see all the resin that dripped off. Have a great day.